What's up, everyone? I'm back this week, and on this episode, I'm going to talk about 5 social media no-nos. So, the things that you might be doing that maybe you shouldn't be doing, or this might even open up your eyes to things that you should be doing and you haven't been doing. So, I'm going to go through a list. 5 social media no-nos. It's going to be short, it's going to be sweet, it's going to be effective, and hopefully you guys can learn a thing or two and apply this to your channels for your business, whether it's your personal brand or a company that you're running. So, right into it. Number one, posting without a strategy. So, this happens more often than you probably realize. You might even be guilty of this yourself, or you might have some like loosey goosey strategy that isn't super supportive for your goals. But without having a clear strategy in place, you're essentially navigating this digital world blindly, if you will. And this can really lead to inefficiency and missed opportunities. So, what I mean by that is that if you're posting without a rhyme or a reason, anything that you're doing, you're not really able to measure or like set towards a goal. So if you put a goal in place and you have ideas of how you can get to that goal, you can then execute on those ideas and then go back to see what's effective, what's not, and then make changes. So when building out a strategy, things that you want to consider are like content pillars, for example. So these are categories or types of information and posts that you want to be posting on a consistent basis, whether that's behind the scenes posts, whether that's brand related posts about like your mission and your vision, whether that's about the product or service about that you're selling, for example. It could be testimonials. So there's a lot of different verticals and ways and things that you can talk about with your business. And of course, depending on the business, there are so many unique content pillars that you can create. These are just very kind of basic high level ones, if you will. But once you have that in place, you have more of like a plan and an idea of what you're going to post. And then what you're going to want to do is kind of like disseminate those content pillars and make sure that you're posting equal amounts throughout or give them a percentage. So, for example, you don't necessarily just want to be selling your product. You don't want to necessarily just be sharing testimonials. So, if you have like 75% testimonials, that's way too much, right? We want to make sure maybe give that like 10% of your feed, maybe behind the scenes is like 25% of your feed, and then break it down like that. So you want to make sure that there's a good balance and essentially just have that strategy in place. You want to know what your overall goals are. Naturally, you should have a mission, vision, and values for your brand, but those might come through a touch differently on your social channels because you might be communicating a little bit differently. You know, when you're chatting on LinkedIn, for example, versus Instagram, you might be a little bit more playful on Instagram. You might want to share some memes, whereas on LinkedIn, maybe you're sharing some more professional content, resharing news articles, etc. So all different things to consider. The strategy really has so many different opportunities. And if you guys are curious about what that strategy consists of, definitely reach out to me. Nomad Creative supports with building out social media strategies on a regular basis. So we do this all the time. And you know what? I'll probably even create another episode specifically about building a social media strategy and what that entails in case you wanted to try and give it a go on your own. All right, moving on. Number two, ignoring your audience. So, one thing to remember is that social media is a two-way street. So, it's not just you constantly posting and putting out. You want to make sure that you're creating content that will allow them to engage and evoke some kind of response, right? So, what that means, what does that look like? It could be replying to comments, for example. I highly suggest that you reply to every single comment, even if it's just with an emoji. What I like to do with the podcast, for instance, is when someone comments something about a reel that we post about the podcast, I like to go in and say, hey, like, what was your favorite part about it? Or, hey, did you have a chance to listen? So, this is an open ended question that allows them to then reply back. And you can do that too with your product or service, you know, like, hey, have you had a chance to try it yet? Or what did you think of the product? Or what did you think of our service? And then that opens up the conversation, not only to like hopefully get some feedback, but also to help with the engagement on social and then hopefully encourage others to do the same thing as well. Another thing that you can do is interactive elements such as like polls, questions, all that stuff in your reels. I feel like people should know this by now, but not enough people utilize them. And it's so fun too. Like it's fun to see what people think and what people have to say. And the questions that they have for you too might be very enlightening as to, the way that your clients and your audience are thinking. So don't ignore your audience. All right. Number 3, neglecting consistency. So I spoke a little bit about this in the first point, but like that consistency, making sure that you're posting regularly is important. So there's different approaches, there's different ways of doing it. I know that social media can be very overwhelming. It's gotten to the point where like everyone's posting every day on like 10 different platforms. And like, I get it. We can't all do that all the time. However, the consistency portion is more important than like the frequency. So for example, if you can try and do like 3 to 5 times a week, let's say on Instagram, that's great. That's great. At least you're showing up. At least you're being active. You don't have to be posting 7 days a week, multiple times a day. You could, but of course, all of that will depend on your strategy as well, right? What are the results that you're looking for? What are your goals? And then you have to put in the effort to match that. Because, if you have a strategy in place that says, I want to gain 1 million followers in the next 5 months, well, chances are you're going to have to do a lot of freaking work to get there. And so, between collaborations and posting frequently and trying all kinds of trends, like you will not leave your phone and your computer. So yeah, just be consistent, create a regular schedule, and show up, I think, is the most important part. Next, number 4, ignoring analytics. So people don't realize that we have access to so many information at our fingertips when you log in. If we're even just looking at Instagram, okay, this like all of the apps have the ability for you to go in and see like what's going on from an analytics standpoint. But Instagram is the easiest. And I feel like it's the more common, popular platform that people are using. So we're going to talk about that for argument's sake. When you take a look at your analytics, you have the opportunity to see what's working and what's not working. Because, okay, wait, backtrack. That didn't make sense. I'm going to backtrack. When you're looking at your analytics, you have the ability to see the specific gender or age group that is viewing your content on your feed as a whole, and specifically for the reel or the post that you're putting out. So by doing that, you can see like who's resonating with your stuff more and make sure to continue to communicate to those people. Or on the flip side, if let's say your target demographic for your business is men aged, 30 to 50, but for whatever reason, the majority of your audience is like women between 20 and 40, then there's kind of something off with the way that you're communicating. And maybe your product is not really doing what you think it is, or maybe you're not targeting the proper group. So really kind of taking a look there, taking a step back, making sure that you're targeting the right people. And if you're not, like, what do you need to do to change things? Or do you need to maybe modify your business to better reflect who's more interested in your product, for example? So there's 2 ways to go about it from that perspective. And then the other thing to do is to look at what posts are the type of posts that are performing better. So let's say you have a day in the life post, or a behind the scenes post, or client highlights, or before and afters. Whether it's a reel versus a story versus a static image versus a carousel, all of these things, like if you're posting consistently with a strategy and you have, let's say, like every week you have 1 day in the life post, every week you have 1 behind the scenes post, and you've been doing that consistently enough, you're going to start to see a trend on which one of those is performing better. So which ones are being shared more, which ones are being saved more, which ones are getting the most comments, which ones are getting the most views. All of these things are really important to look at. And it's a missed opportunity if you're not paying attention to those things, because once you find out what works for your brand, do it more. Keep doing that and put more of that content out, and then go back to your strategy and revise it, and maybe up that percentage on the type of content that's performing better. Because why wouldn't you do that, right? If you're running ads, for example, and you're testing 3 different ads and one of them is performing super well, you're not going to keep spending money on all 3 of the ads. You're going to pause those 2 ads that are not performing well and put all your money behind the ad that works. So it's the same concept here. You're not spending specific money on these posts. However, it is related to like the profit and the benefit of your business down the line. So pay attention. All right, 5, being overly self-promotional. Okay, people, We don't want to be sold all the time. We're already being sold things all the time between the ads on social, walking through the streets, in the city. There's just like ads everywhere on the subway. You know it. I don't have to say it. Okay. So don't do that. Don't do that to everyone else on your social media either. I understand, you have a business, you have a product or a service to sell. However, there is a way to sell indirectly without saying, hey, buy my product. Hey, purchase my service. So we just want to be mindful of that. And again, it really goes back to the strategy. I think honestly, everything goes back to the freaking strategy. Making sure that yes, you have certain sales posts that come out, but it can't be 90% of what you're doing. You have to make sure that your posts are value driven, that they're informative, that they maybe be entertaining, all depending on the type of business, and all with the intention to benefit your audience. That's the goal, because you want people to stick around, you want people to stay on your page. Otherwise, what are they doing? What are you doing? Why even do what you're doing? All right. Okay. Well, that's it. So I'm going to wrap it up. 5 social media no-nos. I hope this was helpful for you guys, and we'll talk next week. Bye.